When the CEO invited the janitor to the party, I never expected such a heartwarming twist. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The air felt electric, crackling with whispers. It was an ordinary Friday morning, yet everything was about to change. My heart raced as I stood by the break room, glancing at the towering glass windows that reflected the corporate skyscrapers around us. The rain drummed on the panes, a steady rhythm that matched my anxious heartbeats. I watched as the office buzzed with excitement. The annual company party was on the horizon, and rumors danced like shadows among the employees. Some were tossing back coffee, while others flipped through glossy invitations, eyes sparkling with anticipation. I felt like an outsider. A janitor. Just a name tag and a mop in a sea of tailored suits and polished shoes. But then I heard it. The CEO, Mr. Thompson, was inviting not just the usual crowd, but someone unexpected. The murmur spread quickly, like wildfire. The janitor! They said it with disbelief, laughter dancing on their lips. I felt my chest tighten. Could they really be talking about me? Would I actually cross that line? I had worked my way up through trials, scrubbing floors, and picking up scraps left behind by others. My hands bore the scars of hard work, the callus speaking a silent gratitude for my tenacity. I glanced over at the others. They were all grinning, amused by the thought of me in a sparkly party dress. Terrifying and enticing all at once. As I cleaned the conference room that day, visions of black ties and cocktail dresses played in my mind. I could imagine them laughing, cheers echoing, while I quietly hovered in the background. Would I be accepted? Or would they mock me? My insides twisted. I stood still, staring at my reflection in the polished table, a flicker of hope battling with the fear that clawed at my throat. That Friday evening, the party lit up with vibrant colors, music pulsing through the air. I could hear laughter, glasses clinking, and an undercurrent of something deeper, swirling beneath the surface. My stomach twisted into knots as I imagined walking into that glitzy spectacle. Would they see the person behind the uniform? Could I be more than just the one who cleaned up after their mess? Just then, Mr. Thompson himself strode into the break room. He looked right at me, his eyes glittering with an intensity that burned away the silence. "I want you to come," he said simply. A thrill shot through me. Did he just invite me to take part in their world? My breath caught, my mind raced, thoughts colliding. I couldn't wrap my head around it. This moment was heavy, saturated with possibilities. I looked at him, trying to read the sincerity in his expression. Behind him, whispers erupted. Curiosity and shock flying like wild birds. They didn't understand, and I could practically feel their eyes on me, weighing my worth. What did this mean? Was there more at stake? As I made my decision that day in the midst of the chaos, I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. The mysteries were building. What would happen when I entered their world? Would I finally be accepted, or would I shatter under the pressure of expectation? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the night unfolded, I stood frozen at the entrance of the lavish ballroom. Glistening chandeliers cast golden light over elegantly dressed figures swirling around the dance floor. The laughter and music enveloped me like a warm blanket, yet beneath that warmth, I felt an ice-cold wave of uncertainty crash over me. Was I really meant to be here among them? With each step into the crowd, I could feel the weight of their gazes, curiosity mingling with disbelief. I adjusted the collar of my rented dress shirt, a fading shade of blue that tried to bring a sense of belonging to my otherwise drab appearance. My heart thumped loudly in my chest as I reminded myself that Mr. Thompson had seen something in me, hadn't he? Perhaps it was a spark of potential, a glimpse of who I could become beyond this moment. Spotting Mr. Thompson in the midst of a conversation, my resolve began to waver. He was so effortlessly comfortable, embodying the essence of a leader. My mind raced through worst-case scenarios as insecurities crept back into my thoughts. What if this was a mere publicity stunt? What if they all had a good laugh at the expense of their janitor? A quaking fear surged through me, and just as I was about to retreat back into the shadows, a gentle hand tapped my shoulder, pulling me from my spiraling thoughts. I turned to find Angela, the marketing executive I had seen around the office. Her warm smile sliced through my anxiety. "Hey! You made it!" she said with genuine surprise. "You look amazing. I don't think I've ever seen you outside of work attire." Her kindness was unexpected and melted the icy barrier I had built around myself. "Thank you," I managed to breathe, trying to find confidence behind my shaking voice. "I need someone to help me escape the clutches of small talk," she said, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "Join me for a quick dance? It will be fun." Before I could answer, she grabbed my hand and pulled me towards the dance floor. The music shifted to a slow song, and I felt the world blur around me as I surrendered to the rhythm. As we twirled and stepped in sync, laughter cascaded from our lips, and for a fleeting moment, I forgot about the other guests, the doubts and fears. In Angela's presence, I became a part of something larger, an emerging connection that felt honorable in its simplicity. Soon, we found ourselves at the bar, where I sipped on a fruit punch, my nerves easing. Conversations drifted around as the company was buzzing with speculation about promotions and mergers, but I tuned it out. My attention focused on Angela as she shared stories from her recent trips. I clung to her warmth like a life raft in turbulent seas, grateful for her kindness that felt so rare in that world. Yet, just as hope began to seep back, I was interrupted by the sharp voice of Derek, the head of operations. "Look who decided to join us," he sneered, his tone laced with sarcasm. "Playing dress-up with the big kids, are we?" Laughter erupted around him, and I felt my stomach drop. Angela stiffened beside me, the simple joy we had shared suddenly sucked out of the room. "That's enough, Derek. You don't know anything about her," she snapped back, her defense fierce and protective. I watched as the confrontation escalated, insecurities fluttering around me like restless fireflies. Before I could appreciate Angela's support, Mr. Thompson approached us, his expression stoic but his eyes flaring with disbelief at Derek's jeering remark. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his voice steady, but I could sense an undercurrent of tension. Derek smirked, just showing our guest exactly where she belongs. The atmosphere grew thick with uncertainty. Mr. Thompson's gaze shifted to me, searching for a response, searching for my truth buried beneath layers of fear and doubt. Would I speak up? Would I defend myself or shatter like glass, lost forever in their eyes? As I opened my mouth, ready to reclaim a piece of my dignity, a sudden shout erupted from across the room. A figure stumbled, knocking into a waiter, sending a tray of champagne glasses crashing to the ground. The collective gasp from the crowd pulled my attention away, but as I turned, I sensed the sinister undertone of the momentous distraction, a turning key to a locked door, and in that instant, everything shifted. The familiar cacophony of laughter turned brittle. My heart trembled at the prospect of what lay ahead. Would I be the one to finally break the cycle, or would I be crushed under the weight of their expectations and prejudices, lost in the chaos? Every moment stretched into infinity as the sound of shattering glass echoed through the ballroom, a momentary fracture in the polished facade of the gathering. My gaze flickered from Derek's sneer to the unfolding chaos across the room, where a young intern, the one responsible for the ill-fated tray, scrambled to collect the broken shards, panic etched across her face. Before I could react, Angela stepped forward, her protective demeanor unwavering as she called out to the intern, "It's okay, I've got this." She looped an arm around her, guiding her away from the debris and towards the quieter corner of the room. The heart of the evening was suddenly thrown into disarray, distorting the sharp edges of judgment and revealing humanity hidden beneath the veneer of grandeur. Yet, even amidst the swirling chaos, my own insecurities washed over me anew. Derek's cruel words circled my mind like vultures scavenging for weakness. The crowd had now shifted its focus, but I remained suspended in my thoughts. It would have been so easy to decay into silent defeat, to internalize the harsh laughter as a verdict on my existence. Mr. Thompson's gaze remained locked onto me, filled with an expectation I could scarcely grasp. Rather than retreating further into the shadows, I felt an instinct to step forward, even as my heart raced in protest. I wanted to reclaim myself from the labyrinth of their gazes, to transform this moment into something of my own. Is everything all right over there? The hiss of Derek's voice broke through the noise, but I clenched my fists, letting the tension fuel my resolve. I took a deep breath, feeling empowered by the unfolding sincerity of the evening, particularly by Angela's unexpected compassion. I may be the janitor, I called out, my voice steady though threaded with a quiver of uncertainty, but that doesn't make me invisible. My declaration hung in the air, met with a wave of surprise around me. Derek's patronizing smile faltered, replaced by an expression of disbelief that seemed to ripple through the crowd. Mr. Thompson's lips curled into a proud smile. Was it pride in me or indignation toward Derek's taunts? I could not decipher, but the weight of his gaze offered a flicker of something profoundly encouraging. Angela returned then, positioning herself firmly beside me, an anchor in the storm. Exactly. Everyone here has a story to tell, she joined in, her enthusiasm sparking from her blue eyes. And every role is vital to the function of this company. We're not just titles, we're a team. She gestured across the room to emphasize her point, her spirit breathing life back into the gathering. The atmosphere around us began to shift, the tension crackling like static as sympathetic murmurs rippled through the audience. I could feel eyes softening, their judgment momentarily dimmed by the resonance of Angela's words. Perhaps, just perhaps, I had begun to carve out a small piece of my own narrative. Yeah, maybe it's time to let go of all the pretense, Derek muttered under his breath, retreating from the spotlight he so loves. That alone felt like a victory, no matter how small, but before I could savor this victory, a creaking sound drew my attention toward the large brass doors at the far end of the ballroom. They swung open, revealing a figure silhouetted in moonlight, an elegant woman with a familiar stance. My heart skipped a beat as I recognized her. It was my estranged mother, her reputation in the business world well known, but so was the chasm her choices had carved between us. I felt the entire room collectively hold its breath as she stepped inside, lithe and poised, an embodiment of elegance that felt like a dagger to my quickening heartbeat. All lingering warmth evaporated, replaced by an electric tension that pulled me between fear and anger. Why was she here now, disrupting a moment that had finally begun to restore my fragmented sense of self? Imagine my surprise, she remarked coolly, surveying the room before landing her gaze on me, to see my little worker bee sweeping up in this hive of influences, each word sliced, carving new doubts and entangling resentments within my heart that I had fought hard to bury. Angela, perhaps sensing my overwhelming disorientation, reached out, clutching my arm firmly in solidarity. Hey, you don't need to listen to her, she whispered softly, grounding me against the storm of emotions threatening to ensnare me. Yet, my mother's presence, the unwelcomed reminder of my past, felt like a weight anchoring me down. Would this night end in laughter, with a flicker of rekindled hope, or would it be the point where everything turned to ashes, consumed by long-standing wounds? It was then that I realized I was standing at a crossroads that would determine how I would view myself, shaped by those choices in the eyes of the crowd and, more importantly, in my own heart. The tumultuous tide of emotion surged within me, and as I steeled myself to confront the moment, a shockwave of realization crashed over me. I was tired of being defined by the perceptions of others. Hello, Mother, I said, my voice steady, breaking through the waves of this stormy night as I stared straight into her unreadable eyes. The moment hung heavy in the air. It felt as if the very walls of the ballroom were listening, waiting for the words that would follow the hesitant greeting. I could sense the murmurs around me rising again, curiosity spilling out in little anxious bursts, despite the clear divide that had just opened up between my mother and me. Surely this was the point of no return for me, a gamble on my own heart, a bet against my past. Well, look at you, finally speaking up in front of an audience, she replied, amusement wrapped in a polished veneer. What an achievement for a janitor. How proud you must be. The haughty lilt in her voice sent ripples of unrest through the crowd, but before I could even respond, a surprising warmth enveloped me. Angela squeezed my arm tighter, projecting a comforting strength that shielded me against the abrasive attack. You know, it doesn't matter what title we carry. It's about the passion we bring to our roles, she proclaimed, causing heads to nod in agreement throughout the room. And I wouldn't want to be defined by someone who's missed out on what truly matters. Her words struck a chord with many present, transforming disbelief into a flicker of unity. I could see some guests shifting their weight, stepping closer to us as if to bridge the chasm my mother's presence had carved out. I was taken aback by the show of support and unexpected armor against the harshness that once felt insurmountable. My mother's eyes narrowed, their steely glint betraying the surprise she felt at Angela's display of defiance. "Look at you, surrounded by a gaggle of sycophants," she scoffed, disdain drenching her words. "Perhaps I should have lowered my standards when I brought you into this world." A shudder coursed through me, the rippling echoes of her disdain threatening to pull me under. It would have been easy to retreat into the shadows, to hide behind the facade of my position, but I clenched my fists instead, refusing to give in. "I have surrounded myself with those who uplift rather than tear down," I replied, aiming my voice to carry across the crowd, drawing strength from the camaraderie enveloping me. The eyes of the assembled guests glinted with intent, seeming to beckon me to press on. "In case you haven't noticed, I am so much more than what you think I am." The moment branched out into the open space, a daring flourish in the midst of battle. I saw nods of encouragement and felt the surge of courage awakening within. It was a revelation, the realization that the past would not dictate the trajectory of my future unless I allowed it to. As she opened her mouth to retort, her words faltered, swept away by the collective breath of the audience as they awaited her response. Angela leaned closer to me, her spirited resolve radiating kindness like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. "Remember how far you've come. This is your moment." Yet, even amidst the spiraling emotions, a shadow fell over the evening, a new challenge lurking just out of reach. Suddenly, the lights flickered in the ballroom, a momentary flicker turning the entire room into a tableau of figures caught in half-light. Conversation ceased, confusion rippling through the crowd like the tremor of a distant earthquake. As darkness pooled around us, I saw my mother's expression shift, the haughty veneer cracking briefly as something unfathomable crossed her face, a flicker of fear. She opened her mouth, words caught on her tongue, and I took a daring step forward, drawn to the familiar defiance rising within me. "What's wrong, Mother? Afraid we might actually be happier without you?" I pressed, feeling emboldened by the uncertainty infiltrating the space around us. The tension that had built continually simmered just beneath the surface. Then, as if completely unannounced, there came a loud, sickening crash from the far side of the ballroom. The crowd gasped, the lights shuddering back to life, revealing a disarray of toppled chairs and the unmistakable silhouette of my brother, one I hadn't seen in years now, stumbling amidst the chaos, looking lost yet determined. Every heartbeat echoed loudly in my ears as my mind wrestled with the implications of his sudden appearance. Was he here to confront our mother, to pick up the pieces of all we had lost? Or was he just another confusing tangle in this night of revelations? As the reality of his presence washed over me, my emotion swirled once again. The cliffhanger extended its claws into my heart, the night shifting into an exhilarating uncertainty. Each glance I exchanged with Angela, and each snowballing moment with my mother and brother ignited questions that I realized might just tear open the very fabric of who I believed I was. And they would inevitably lead me to unravel truths long hidden beneath the weight of expectation. Had I truly stepped forward into the light, or was this merely another chapter in the chaos of family tragedy? I was terrified of the answer. Every eye in the room turned, jogging in unison towards the chaos unveiled at the edge of the ballroom. My heart raced, every thump mingling with the distant gasps of surprise. I hadn't seen Lucas in years, not since that summer that felt both like yesterday and a lifetime ago. I had buried our family ties under the rubble that had been left after our father's passing. "Lucas." My voice, both a whisper and a plea, slipped from my lips, carried on the charged air. He looked up at me, his bright eyes dimmed by uncertainty but fierce with determination. The room buzzed with questions unasked, and my mother's composed mask shattered further, revealing anger twisted back to panic. "Get away from her." She barked, as if her children were mere playthings rather than flesh and blood. Despite her command, he stood steady, wiping the mingled dust from his suite, a blatant signal of his readiness to confront whatever lay before him. "Why now?" I wondered, stepping toward him as if pulled by an invisible thread. Angela's quiet presence beside me whispered encouragement, grounding me amidst the upheaval. I wanted to understand, yet everything felt chaotic. I hadn't prepared for Lucas to wade through these unmarked waters with me, and I couldn't fathom what he had endured in the years I lost touch. "Why did you come back?" I yelled, half desperate for clarity and half eager to protect this newfound spark of strength within me. The ballroom echoed my inquiry, and he took a deep breath, clearly collecting his thoughts amidst the swirling emotions. I was nearby, he started, each word deliberately chosen, as if they were sacred. "I heard about the gala, about you standing up against her. And I couldn't just stay away." Lucas' voice cracked momentarily, breaking my heart at the pain in it. I could see him grappling with his own memories, our shared history flooding the space between us. A flicker of recognition passed through the crowd, and with it, a current of empathy began to surge. Slowly, faces softened, the oppressive tension mustering a sense of kinship. Perhaps, together, we could rewrite the narrative that bound us in silence and neglect. Timidly, I reached for his hand, and he took Ithis' grip steadfast. In that singular connection, layers of unspoken stories spilled forth, cloaking us in the fragility of family reconnect. But my mother's eyes burned into us, a flame threatening to devour the fragile bridge we were attempting to build. "What does he think he's doing here?" she hissed, her expression contorting into an incomprehensible blend of anger and disbelief. "He was always a failure, a coward who ran away when the world fell apart. Stop it!" I shouted, newfound defiance coursing through my veins. "You don't get to define us anymore. We are not your failures." The room held its breath, captivated by the raw emotions unfurling before them. In that moment, I glimpsed something unguarded within my moth-era vulnerability she hid so well beneath layers of disdain and control. It was almost too painful to observe. Angela stepped forward, her warmth radiating as she addressed my mother directly. "You have no idea what Theve endured. Just as you have been lost in your own sorrow, they have struggled too." As awful as it was to witness the distance my mother kept, a singular truth emerged: wounds were often etched by the very hands that held our paths. The massacre of silence that spanned our family created cracks too deep to ignore. In the shift of my mother's posture, I saw hesitation, a break in her indifference, but the shift was short-lived. "How dare you?" she snapped, knitting her brows as though everyone's warmth had turned to ice against her declarations. "How dare you rise against me here?" In my home, the crack in her facade darkened, and anger marbled with something deeper: fear, perhaps. Or regret? My heart drummed a chaotic rhythm. The family conflagration I had been so desperately avoiding now approached its boiling point, and I was unwilling to let someone else sever ties that were already fraying. "I don't believe this is your home anymore, not with how you treat those around you," I replied, words rushing forth like waters breaking through a dam. "It's about time we took this space back." Before I could steady my heartbeat, Lucas chimed in, "Maybe we can all start anew together." His voice trembled, but sparks of hope ignited the air. "Family isn't just about blood, it's about the connections we honor." But there, caught in the suffocating silence, came another crash, less of pot and more of something heavy falling in the shadows that turned my stomach. Anxiety gripped my heart, twisting in knots as the atmosphere thickened. An older gentleman near the back of the room collapsed to the floor, clutching his chest, confusion and panic seeping through the ballroom. Anguished cries filled the air. I stood paralyzed for a moment, my family's turmoil eclipsed by the urgent call for help. Suddenly, without thinking, I turned to Lucas, his eyes widening as chains of adrenaline bound us together. "We need to help him." The words left my mouth as an impulse, unbounded and pure. This crisis could reshape the night, and whether we were ready or not, the truth started revealing itself: the emotional landscape of family dynamics, the hovering specter of the past, and the struggles ahead were all intertwined in the moments that followed. As we rushed toward the chaotic scene unfolding, a shiver ran through me, a sense that we might not be just confronting a man's health crisis, but might unleash something buried deep within our own familiar revelation destined to define us, and for better or worse, I feared that this was only the beginning. In the chaos that unfolded before us, I could barely hear the frantic gasps of the crowd or the panicked calls for a doctor. All I felt was an undeniable urge to help, as if the spirit of the night had shifted towards something greater. I pulled Lucas along with me, his grip still firm in mine. As we neared the man on the floor, something within me flickered, be it fear or an instinctual call to protect. I knew we had to act, the elderly gentleman gasped, his breath shallow, his face pale as though the life was already ebbing from his frame. A small crowd formed, people unsure whether to look on or join in the effort of assistance. My eyes darted around, searching for someone who could take the lead. Yet it was Lucas who stepped forward, kneeling beside the fallen figure, demonstrating a calmness that surprised me amidst the urgency. "Can someone call an ambulance?" he yelled, his voice steady amidst the rising tide of panic. Despite the turmoil surrounding us, a strange sense of stability emanated from him, a grounding presence that began to echo in the chaos. I dropped to my knees on the other side of the man, noticing the distress etched into the faces of those watching. "Sir, can you hear me?" I urged, pressing my fingers lightly against the old man's wrist, checking for a pulse, my heart racing alongside the cadence of hope mingled with dread. "Help is on the way. Just hold on." Lucas' eyes widened with worry as he searched the crowd. I could see the cracks forming within him, a glimpse into the emotions he had carefully tucked away. Yet even in the darkness, I sensed a flicker of strength. He had come back to confront our family history, and now, in this crisis, perhaps he found purpose once more. A woman near us finally nodded, her features setting into that of determination. "I'll call," she shouted, rushing towards the exit, her heels clacking anxiously against the floor. In that moment, I felt a connection that I hadn't noticed before, a reminder that when darkness fell, humanity often rallied together, a beacon of light through the shadows. "Someone check for signs of a heart attack," Lucas said, glancing at me before turning back to the man. "Is there anyone here who knows this man? Does he have a medical history?" My mind was ablaze, transfixed by the scene before me, a frail body surrounded by those with their own stories, each of us a thread weaving into the fabric of this moment. Images of Lucas and me during our childhood danced through my mind, the days spent at the park, the laughter that bridged our bond. Now, just a simple shared effort drew us together in ways I hadn't anticipated. Finally, I caught sight of someone brave enough to step forward, a nurse who had seen the commotion and rushed into the fray. Her practiced demeanor instantly brought a wave of comfort, coordinating the emerging response team amidst the crowd. "Step aside, let me through," she commanded, taking charge as we parted to give her space to work. A few moments felt like an eternity as the air crackled with fear before the sound of sirens broke through the memento chaser of authority, echoing reassurance that help was near. As the paramedics rushed in, I stole a glance at Lucas, who met my gaze. There was an understanding between us, a shared resilience that bound us through our separate struggles and our tangled family narrative. Each pulse of the moment filled the silence, drawing me into a deeper labyrinth of thought. Was this chaos a reflection of our family's own unaddressed health issues, emotional and physical alike? The commotion began to disperse as the paramedics worked, their commands punctuated by the anxious whispers of onlookers. Slowly, the old man was stabilized and wheeled towards the exit on a stretcher, but as he passed us by, he suddenly opened his eyes and grasped Lucas' hand with surprising strength. "Thank you," he murmured, voice trembling but sincere. The brief exchange felt electrifying, a moment where something beautiful ignited between strangers. Lucas nodded, a mixture of awe and humility washing over him. While I sensed that we had merely played a small role in a larger narrative tonight, I couldn't shake off the idea that this moment might signify the shift our family desperately required. Through this unexpected interruption, perhaps we were all being given a chance to redefine ourselves, to rekindle those connections that had long been dormant, but the night still held shadows, waiting just out of view. As I stood, watching the ambulance fade into the darkness, a chilling thought took residence in my heart, the awareness that my mother's fury wouldn't be soothed by this chaos and vulnerability. She still lurked among us, a storm yet to be unleashed, and a part of me feared that the true battle lay ahead, waiting patiently to take center stage. And yet, in the intertwining of Lucas' hand with mine, alongside moments of kindness emerging from the crowd, I sensed a warmth that whispered of change. Perhaps the challenge of rekindling our family ties was only just beginning, and as the sirens faded, so too did the veil of silence that had hung heavily over us. Our journey forward was fraught with uncertainty, but, armed with this flicker of hope, I felt we could face whatever came next together. I just hadn't realized then, standing amid the remnants of a chaotic night, that it would be the whispered family secrets that would soon rise to demand their reckoning. The air was still heavy with the residual tension of the night when Lucas and I stepped away from the scene, our pulse still racing. I could sense a shift within him, a dawning understanding of his own strength. It was almost surreal how, in a single moment of shared vulnerability, our childhood friend's bond felt renewed. Still, the weight of the unspoken emotions loomed heavily, casting shadows over our tentative reunion. As we navigated the crowded street, the world around us pulsed rhythmically, but within me, there was uncertainty. "Lucas, do you think that man will be okay?" I asked, the words slipping out before I fully comprehended their significance. It wasn't merely concern for a stranger, it was the echo of our own family's unresolved turmoil, the unease of not knowing if we'd ever be okay. Lucas inhaled sharply and looked toward the fading lights of the ambulance, an unwritten worry flickering across his features. "I think he will be. He had so many people rallying around him. It reminded me that." He trailed off, as if contemplating the unspoken bond we two needed to forge. I nudged his shoulder gently, urging him to continue. "What? Reminded you of what? That we can't wait for the perfect moment to act, you know? We've always put off addressing what's been right in front of us," he admitted, his voice low yet steady. "It's easier to turn away." Each syllable he spoke felt like semi-transparent glass, fragile and layered with centuries of inheritance I wished to shatter. "No more waiting," I echoed, half for myself, half for him. A silent promise was birthed between us, an agreement to dismantle whatever unspoken barriers remained in our way, those walls we had meticulously built in the name of survival. However, as we walked, the skies turned a deep, brooding navy, and the first hints of rain began to fall. The droplets were light at first, just kisses against our skin, but they quickly intensified, transforming our shared determination into a rushed endeavor for shelter. We ducked into a nearby cafe, its interior aglow with soft light. The casual buzz of conversation enveloped us like a warm blanket, but I could feel the tension stored in my chest. We settled into a cozy booth, a secluded oasis amidst the cafe's liveliness. The familiar scent of coffee and pastries wafted around, grounding me when it felt like the world was spinning unpredictably. Yet, I couldn't escape the flickering connection weaving through the atmosphere, the strange harmony forged from chaos that had bound us so rapidly. "Let's talk," I said, a touch of urgency in my voice. "About everything." Lucas hesitated, biting his lower lip. The weight of his thoughts hung in the air, unyielding. "You know we need to face Mom," he said finally, breaking through the silence. "She's been different since Dad passed." The mention of our mother sent tremors through my veins. Her anger had always been like a volatile storm, ready to unleash whenever we dared to step out of line. The turbulent history of our family relationships hung like an unfurled banner above us, fragile and tattered, threatening to snap at any moment. The weight of that truth pushed down on my heart as I recalled her piercing gaze moments before the chaos erupted that evening. "What if she doesn't want to listen?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, for the dread simmering beneath the surface was profound. Lucas' brow furrowed, and for a moment, his eyes held mine with a vulnerability I had rarely seen. "We're stronger together. We can share what we've learned tonight, about community and kindness. Maybe that will remind her of what really matters, not just the past, but the present." His words hung between us, a heartbeat of hope amidst despair. Just as I contemplated what tomorrow might bring, a commotion in the cafe drew my attention. A figure stumbled through the door, soaked and breathless. A woman slipped on the tile floor and nearly fell, but when I glanced again, I realized she was clutching a faded folder to her chest, determination etched into her brow. As she steadied herself and looked around, I was struck by an overwhelming feeling, a sense of familiarity. It was as if she had stepped right out of the stories I had heard, parts of our heritage that had always been whispered but never shared aloud. My heart pounded erratically as she caught Lucas's eye. "Lucas?" she breathed, voice trembling yet strong. Upon hearing his name, I felt an electric stir of recognition pulse through the space, weaving into the fabric of a connection I hadn't expected. "Mom?" Lucas asked, confusion knitting his brow tight. The air around us crackled with questions, and I watched in silent awe as the storm exerted its power. At that moment, I realized our night of chaos had merely been a prelude, the quiet before a deeper tempest broke, a revelation that could hold the lost secrets of our family and the path we must brave to forge a new beginning. The rain drummed against the windows like a heartbeat, shaping a symphony of urgency and resolution. As tears shimmered in her eyes, she took a step forward, and I felt something within me shift once again. Balance teetered on a knife edge, the tumult of decisions and alliances hanging precariously above us like a delicate chandelier swaying in the wind. What had she come to unveil? I instinctively squeezed Lucas' hand, feeling that together we would discover what awaited us in the growth of this chaos, a truth that could either shackle us or set us free. The rain barely let up, its rhythmic patter against the cafe windows muffling the cacophony of voices inside. I felt the atmosphere shift beneath the weight of our mother's presence, palpable like a brewing storm. Instinctively, I leaned closer to Lucas, needing his warmth, his strength, everything I hadn't realized I needed but now craved intensely. "Mom?" Lucas repeated, his voice tinged with confusion and a glimmer of something softer, something nearly fragile. "What are you doing here?" The woman, my mother, stood rooted for a heartbeat longer, her expression a mingling of emotions that danced like shadows across her face. I felt the unbridled tension in the air, an electric charge that held space for both fear and hope. As I met her gaze, I caught a glimpse of the grief that had transformed her. What had once been a figure of towering strength now seemed weathered, fragile, as if she had weathered a storm outside of herself. "I came to find you," she finally managed, her voice steady yet vulnerable. "I was worried. You disappeared, and I didn't know where to turn." Internally, I flinched at her words. Beneath the surface of this concern lay years of unspoken resentment, years spent lost in her shadow. But before I could spiral into thoughts of anger or hurt, I noticed the folder she held clutched tightly against her chest. There was a raw fragility in the way she gripped it, as if it contained more than just paper. It felt almost ceremonial, a vessel of secrets yearning to breathe. Lucas' expression wavered from confusion to recognition, much like my own. "Why now? After everything? You've been so distant since Dad." His voice trailed off as the memory hung uncomfortably in the air, sharp and jagged. "I know," she interrupted urgently. "And I'm so sorry for that. But these past few years, they have taken such a toll. I let my grief wrap around me like a noose. I forgot how to connect. I forgot I even had you." A sigh escaped my lips, weighted with all the emotions that had tethered me to a lost past. And yet, even in her admission, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was the beginning of peeling back the layers wrapped tightly around our family, the chance to repair what was frayed, permanently embedded in our histories. "Mom, we've been waiting," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "We want to talk, to actually talk. But you have to meet us halfway." The words poured from me, summoned by the thought of all the moments lost while standing at the edge of the chasm that separated us. Her eyes widened at my resolve, and I saw a glimmer of recognition ping between us, a spark of understanding bridging the abyss. She took a step toward us, her movements hesitant yet intentional, and slowly set the folder on the table between us. "I've been working on something, evidence of our past," she said, her voice taking on a tremor. "Things about your father, about our family that I didn't want to face. But I thought it was time for you both to know. For us to know. Otherwise, we might just end up repeating the cycle." Beneath my chest, a tumult of emotions roiled. Hope battled skepticism, and grief mingled with longing as I stared at the folder, its humble exterior concealing the secrets of a life I barely grasped. Could it really hold the pathway to healing, a way to untangle the webs of our family's history? Before I could articulate my murmur of agreement, a sudden gust of wind forced the door to swing wide, an intrusion that left the cafe in silence momentarily as expectant eyes turned to the new arrival. An elderly man, soaked to the bone, staggered in. His breath hitched as he scanned the room, and for a moment, recognition flickered in his eyes as he locked eyes with our mother. "Margaret," he gasped, seemingly caught between fear and a long-buried regret. The air shifted once again, electric with the tense undercurrents of lives that intersected too richly with sorrow. All at once, the room felt too small, the truths too tangled. Who was this man? What lay beneath his intersection with our mother, and how does this revelation twist our already fragile story? The folder lay heavy between us, waiting to spill its contents into the open air, yet I could sense another storm brewing on the horizon, an unanticipated confession that could reshape everything we thought we knew. Is this the man from our past? I stammered, fear now issuing the very question that had danced on the tips of my lips since she arrived. Lucas' hand tightened around mine, and I could almost hear the collective intake of breath as the rain continued to pummel the windows, drowning out the murmurs I could hardly comprehend. All I felt was confusion and anticipation, teetering on the cusp of a revelation that threatened to fracture our reality, our family ties echoing within the confines of our intertwined histories. The elderly man stood there, drenched and disheveled, yet a flicker of recognition haunted his eyes. I felt the shift in the air, a significant moment drawing us all in, as if time itself had paused to gauge the weight of what was about to unfold. He took a shaky step forward, almost as if he sought the warmth of the cafe's light in the shadows of his own past. "Margaret," he faltered, his voice breaking as memories seemed to swirl around him like fallen leaves caught in a web of gusty wind. Mom looked taken aback, a myriad of emotions painting her face: surprise, fear, and perhaps a glimpse of sadness. "George," she whispered, recognition coloring her tone. The name came out so softly, yet it struck me like thunder rolling through a quiet night. Who was George? What role had he played in the fabric of our lives that Mom had so carefully concealed? Lucas shifted uneasily beside me, his strong hand trembling slightly in my grip as the implications of this moment began to unfold. "Do you know him?" He whispered hoarsely. "More than I ever intended," she replied, her voice now trembling with regret, each word a fragile piece of glass that could either cut or heal. George moved closer, and I could see a deep sadness lurking in the creases of his brow. His eyes swam with untold stories battling against the tide of unexpressed emotions. "I thought I lost you both," he said, the sincerity thick in his voice. "After everything, you have no idea how long I've searched." It became clear in that moment that he wasn't just a ghost from our mother's past, he was a caged spirit, a survivor of the sorrow that led to our family's unraveling. I exchanged a glance with Lucas, our thoughts swirling in the same paradigm. Who had left behind this enigma, a man whose presence seemed to churn the turbulent waters of our family history? I could feel the gravity of the situation stirring something deep within me, an unsettling mixture of apprehension and curiosity that threatened to spin out of control. Mom's voice quivered as she finally gathered the strength to speak. "Why? Why now, George? After all these years of silence?" She looked vulnerable while grappling with the weight of her words. "Where have you been?" The cafe's lively atmosphere faded into the background. All that was left was the three of us, a woman grappling with her past, a man burdened by what he had lost, and two siblings caught in the crossfire of emotions. "I had to leave," George said, the words spilling from his lips with urgency. "It was a decision I made to protect you both, to protect the family. But I was wrong. I should have fought harder to stay involved." His gaze flickered between her and us, seeking honesty in the exchange, a longing for connection that transcended decades of absence. "So you knew about Dad?" Lucas's voice remained steady, yet I sensed a storm brewing within him. "You were part of all this." George's shoulders slumped, each movement dripping with the weight of guilt. "I didn't know the full extent of the darkness," he admitted, his voice dropping to a hush. "But I could have done more. We could have faced it together." In the quiet that followed, I felt as if the walls themselves were closing in. Every fragile hope I had started to weave into our family story felt now made of thread too thin to hold. The rain drummed steadily against the window, the reminder of the storm outside echoing the turmoil brewing within. I looked down at the folder resting on the table, its secrets still hidden beneath its cover, the tangled histories, the memories waiting to bore forth and reshape our understanding of everything we knew. "Mom, what does this mean for us?" I found myself asking, the gravity of the moment suddenly palpable. "It means everything has changed," she responded softly, tears welling in her eyes. "It means I can't hide anymore. Not from you, not from him, and certainly not from myself." The unraveling of our family had only just begun, with revelations colliding and overwhelming us. I reached for Lucas' hand, the hope of reconciliation flickering in his grasp, while simultaneously trembling with uncertainty. Our future hung suspended in that moment, teased by the promise of healing, yet dangled precariously over the abyss of unrest. "And what if we can't face it?" Lucas' voice was barely above a whisper, tinged with the fear of the unknown. "I don't know if we can, but we must try," she replied, her voice breaking, carrying the weight of too many years of silence. The storm outside roared like a beast hungry for attention, clamoring in tandem with the storm brewing within our hearts. As the door swung shut behind George, a hush fell over the cafe once more. Just as we thought the dust had settled, a piercing ring shattered the calm, the undeniable sound of Mom's phone vibrating atop the table. Looking down, I saw her freeze, the blood draining from her face as she answered without a word. In that pregnant pause, just before she spoke, I could feel the world around us shift again. There was something in her expression: fear? Anxiety? Or was it something else entirely, hidden behind the facade of the moment? I could feel the walls closing in once more, as one phrase escaped her lips: "How did you find me?" In that moment, I knew the depths of our family's unraveling had much more to reveal than I'd ever expected, and we were only at the beginning of a journey that would challenge every bond we thought we'd rebuilt. The cafe buzzed eerily with whispers, patrons becoming conspicuous watchers, eyes flickering back and forth between our family's unfolding drama and their cups of coffee. The tension was electric, crackling to the rhythm of my mother's voice, which grew tremulous with each shaky intake of breath. "How did you find me?" she repeated, her expression a mix of fear and vulnerability. The silence that followed was heavy. It felt like the walls were inching closer, ready to envelop us in a cocoon of unresolved issues clawing at the surface. With one simple question, it was as if the specters of our past had been summoned into the crowded cafe, wielding secrets we had yet to uncover. As her conversation continued, I felt Lucas' hand tighten around mine, his presence anchoring me as I fought to grasp the sheer enormity of the moment. "What if it's someone from the past?" he whispered, glancing at the folder still lying untouched between us. "Someone who might remind us of everything we thought we left behind." His words resonated like distant thunder. What more could one conversation unearth? My heart raced at the idea that our fragile attempts to re-establish familial ties could easily be unraveled by the very connections we had tried so desperately to escape. "Margot?" The voice on the other end of the line pierced through the air like an arrow, causing my mother to flinch visibly. It was a voice I didn't recognize but felt inexplicably drawn to, a voice that nudged the edges of long-buried memories. Her eyes, wide and stricken, darted from Lucas to me, a flicker of recognition dancing there, but I couldn't determine if it was worry or urgency that radiated from her. "Dad?" I blurted, my words spoken before I could catch them, echoing in the shared silence. It was a catalyst igniting an avalanche of spiraling thoughts and confusions. The complexity of our family, steeped in layers of hurt, betrayal, and the silence we had wrapped ourselves in, flooded my mind like an unrelenting tide. In that moment, I turned to Lucas. What if this call changes everything again? What if we can't face whatever she needs to say? The weight of my concern hung thick in the air. Lucas opened his mouth to respond as the call reached a crescendo. My mother's well-manicured facade splintered. "I don't want to talk now, not here," she finally said, a tremor underlying her voice. "Not after all this time." I could hear the soft cracking of her defensive walls, the fissures in her armor slowly yielding to the floodwaters of the past. It felt as if history itself was weaving through the cafe, wrapping around us as memories reached up from the threads of silence. With one last glance at the old man, I began to feel that he was not here solely as a reminder of lost time. He represented the possibility of reclaiming our fractured family narrative if he could find strength against anything once thought irreparable. "Mom, what is this about?" I pressed, leaning forward, desperation clawing at my throat. "What is it you've hidden from us?" Her expression faltered again, the fear morphing into something deeper, an understanding that she could no longer shield us from the painful truths we were all tangled in. With a sigh reminiscent of ages lost, she set the phone down gently, her lower lip trembling like a fragile leaf caught in the wind. "Before I let you all think I was strong enough to navigate every storm alone," she started, her voice almost a whisper, "I have fought a war within my heart against what I believed was true." The words hung, weighed down by years of silence, and I could feel every misaligned memory swirling around us. "This isn't just about you anymore. This affects all of us and our choice going forward," I said, newfound courage surfacing from the depths of my bemusement. I noticed Lucas nodding, his gaze steady on her. "We can keep pretending the past doesn't exist, Mom," he added. "We have to fight for each other this time." The storm raged outside, rain lashed against the windows like 1,000 tears set free, creating a soundtrack to the chaos of emotion swelling in the cafe. As she surveyed us, something shifted in the air, anticipation thick as molasses. "Okay," she finally murmured, taking a deep exhale. "It's time to face who we were and to discover the truth behind why we became the way we are." Slowly, my mother resumed her seat, and the cafe seemed to hold its breath, waiting for her to unwrap the complexities that had burdened her heart. She set the folder down onto the table, her fingers trembling as she opened it carefully. At first, all I could see were yellowed papers filled with unfamiliar names, dates, and places that felt as foreign as the truths they were embedding within our family history. "Those are our family documents, stories I didn't want to share, names I didn't want you to face," she confessed, her voice thick with emotion. "But they hold the answers to who your father really was, who I was before you both were born, and why some things are irrevocable. It's time you understand how life pulled me apart." I wanted to reach out, to cradle her hand within mine, but fear knotted my throat. What had she kept hidden, and how could we possibly bear the weight of truths that had been stifled for so long? With each page she turned, the darkness and light danced to an unfamiliar rhythm. Layers were being peeled back, revealing not just a history that was ours, but a future waiting to be reclaimed. In that crisp, dim light, I chose to lean into the unfolding discomfort, the choice that could gird us in understanding. "Together, we'll get through this," I murmured to Lucas. "We have to, for us and for her." As my mother's voice lowered to speak of our past, the intensity of that moment caught us together, threading our hearts through the memories etched deep within those pages. I could see it clearly now. The path that had once felt suffocating was unfurling. The rain lashed relentlessly against the windows, but now, oddly enough, the storm sang a ballad of resilience, a promise of unearthing and understanding. With every detail she unveiled, the patterns in our lives slowly began to intertwine with hope, like branches reaching for sunlight once more. And I realized then, standing at the precipice of our family's truth, that perhaps healing is not merely found in revelations but in our unwavering resolve to face them together. Light flickered within, and as my mother's shuddering breath took weight, I found solace knowing that our stories were finally blossoming into something genuinely beautiful, something worth the fight. "We won't shy away anymore," I declared, holding Lucas's hand tightly, feeling the unity that had been forged from fire, a family realizing that together, we could emerge from the storm. That was when I made a silent promise to the future beyond the tumult of what we thought defined us. Waiting for us was a hope intertwined with possibility. There was more to us than the fractures we bore. Perhaps, just perhaps, we were destined for a healing greater than ourselves. And as the storm within us quelled slightly, a single thread of clarity, hope knotted together amidst the chaos, welcomed the dawn, waiting just beyond the horizon. The brokenness was only the beginning, leading us toward the promise that light, like love, could reshape our very narrative. "We're not just starting anew," I whispered, feeling the warmth of kinship bloom around us. "We're ready to forge a legacy." And with that, I couldn't help but echo the words that would carry us forward, whispering into the waiting silence of our future, "We will rise."